Okay, are we on? Okay, yeah, there it is. And the camera moved, so I guess we're on. All right, the Ag Committee will come to order. We have a couple of orders of business. We'll have two hearings today, and we'll also have one tomorrow, right? Yes, one tomorrow. And the chairman was a bit confused, but I think we've got next week in order pretty much as well. We'll have a pretty full week. Obviously, we'll not meet on Friday. We will next week have a couple hearings on next Monday, and then we will work all that we've heard today, tomorrow, and Monday on Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, kind of a follow-up to last week. We're working on the final details, but hopefully next Wednesday, Dr. Glenn Tonser from K-State will be here to talk about the cattle market. You know, we're on now the 6th week of $114 cash sales, and box beef prices still above that $225 to $230. So he does a lot of those presentations. So just to kind of give us some insight and our chance to ask all kinds of questions and to say how come it is and why. And he has done this for a number of years as well. So, and coming from extension and land grant, so that'll be a couple of other follow-up before we get started. If it's okay with the committee, we had to make some technical changes to the minutes. Nothing changed. It was simply some format situations that it came to light late last week that it's kind of like you're at the ball game, and then at the end of the third quarter, the coach says you should have been doing X47 rather than X74. And it's all fine, just a little extra work for Terry, but I think we are now a compliant committee. So if anybody has any questions, let us know, but nothing changed other than simply a formatting situation. And right before I came into committee, I received an email from Kevin Thieland, who was with us last week from the Beef Council, has some numbers from the Cattlemen's Beef Board as far as export situations and those numbers that they said they would get back to us. So Terry will hopefully distribute those, if not after the meeting tomorrow. So you can have those with you as well. So I think that's the housekeeping I have for right now. If you have something for the committee, we'll make that offer at the end of the hearings today. So with that, we will open up the hearing for Senate Bill 89, as exempting the transport of agricultural forage commodities from secured load requirements. That's a lot for just basically for silage haulers, what I think it is, at least in the broad sense of the term. So for an overview of the bill, Kyle Hamilton, welcome to committee, Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senate Bill 89 would amend KSA 8/1906 to exempt trucks, trailers, or semi-trailers when hauling agricultural forage commodities intrastate from the place of production to the market or place of storage from the requirements that any such vehicle be constructed, loaded, or covered to prevent any of its load from escaping. This exemption would not apply to hay bales or other packaged or bundled forage commodities. Senate Bill 89 is a reintroduction of 2020 Senate Bill 267. That bill passed the Senate on a vote of 39-0, but died in the House before a hearing could be held. Senate Bill 89 would take effect upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any preliminary questions.
Any questions for Kyle on the bill? Representative Carlin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand this is for loose product in the back of a truck. Loose. It's not bundled. It's not baled. So would hemp fall in that category?
Thank you for that question. I guess it would just depend perhaps on whether it is packaged or bundled and whether it's being used as a forage commodity.
Oh, I see. Let's see. So for forage, it means it's going to be eaten by an animal. Eaten? or just, can it be for bedding, or what is forage used? What does forage mean? I don't know.
Well, I will note that there is not an express definition of the term agricultural forage commodity within this bill itself or within the surrounding statutes. So it is a term that could be defined through an amendment by the committee if you wish, but as of now, it would probably be interpreted by a court as just the plain meaning of the words. And I believe, the broadest typical meaning is its use for livestock feed.
So it's mostly feed. Okay, and I just wanted to clarify that. I think somebody asked me that question, and I wasn't sure, but I would assume that hemp would often be cut and not baled because they do want it to keep its temperature down. So, okay. As far as silage, it's wet and packs.
Yeah, and we can address that.
Yeah, okay.
So-
Thank you, Mr.
So we'll
Chair.
address that. Representative Newland, if you want to answer her question, Representative Carlin's question as well, before you ask yours, that would be fine as well. If you think it needs to be defined more.
Well, forage would be defined as an edible product for livestock feed. The hemp is not an edible product. Hemp is applied or harvested for other products, so.
And I think we'll learn
this would
more as a
not apply
testimony.
here.
So ask your question then.
But my question would be, is there any mileage limitation on this bill?
Al, did you hear the question?
Yes, thank you for that question. Looking through the language of the bill, there is no express limitation as far as exact numbers of miles. It's just intrastate from the place of production to a market or place of storage.
Okay, thank you, Kyle.
Okay, any other questions for Kyle? Thank you. Seeing none, there is a fiscal note that had no fiscal effect on the budget. So just if you're aware of that, that is in the packet of information. And then I lost what I had. That's good. Okay, let's go to proponents now. First up, Dean Clark from the Kansas Livestock Association. Dean, welcome to committee. It's clear, isn't it? Did I mess that one up?
It's clear, but I'll
That's what I
answer
thought,
to either. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Dean Clare. I serve with the Kansas Livestock Association. We represent over 5,700 livestock producers across the state. And we are here today in support of Senate Bill 89. The reviser did a great job of explaining what this bill does. And for those of you who aren't aware of what loose leaf forage commodities are, it's simply related to silage, which is when corn, sorghum, other commodities are cut while they're still green. The whole plant is cut, and then it's thrown into a truck, taken to a place of storage where it's packed, covered, and left to ferment for a period of time, and then fed as feed to livestock. I would point you to my testimony. If you scroll down or go to the next page, what you'll see depicted there is a silage truck. That truck right now, as it is available to, if you were pulled over, could be cited a Class C misdemeanor as it is, and that's because it does not have a tarp on it. These trucks are not designed to be tarped, as you can see there. They're tall, square, boxy, and compared to other commodity trucks, the whole back end opens up for it to be dumped out. They're not designed to be tarped. Secondly, like we are well aware, these are high moisture products that are extremely cohesive, and that the product tends to stick together. And so it's highly unlikely that any product were to fly out. And if it was to fly out, it's likely to be some foliage, loose leaf that's unlikely to cause any harm or damage. Another thing that I would like to point out, that the reason that it's also unlikely for anything to fly out is these are often short, frequent trips. You know, a commodity truck may be hauling grain to a facility across the state that pays more, but these are strictly from the field to the place of storage or marketplace, which is where directly to the farm where it's being sold to. And so it's most commonly quick, short, frequent trips. And like the revisor had said, this was placed on the consent calendar in the Senate and passed 39-0, both this year and last year. And we'd stand here in support for passage. And with that, I'd stand for questions.
Mr. Clare, any questions? What, this has been brought forward because of, I wouldn't say harassment, but certain parts of the state has had issue with this because of consumer complaints. Is that kind of how, is this because there was a lot of citations written? Is that why?
Yes, there was a lot of citations written in western Kansas from, I believe, all from the same officer. I don't believe there was any complaints filed. It was just frequent ticketing from the same area. Another thing that I'd like to point out, the question was earlier about why loosely foraged commodities. And we use that because the actual definition of silage is already fermented product. This obviously has not had the chance to ferment yet, and that's why we use the terminology loosely foraged products.
Okay. Other questions? Representative Orr.
Mr. Chairman, I just might comment that we buy silage all the time, and we buy it as closely as we can, but sometimes you simply must carry it 4, 5, 6, maybe 10 miles. And so it does create a problem, and I appreciate you supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. And again, this is for year-round, even though typically silage is now done for a very short window. This is for greenage. I mean, you know, alfalfa doesn't really matter, right?
If the alfalfa is loose, then technically it could. But then we also specifically target this to avoid no bundled products, because then there is serious risk of someone getting hurt if that were to fall off or causing damage. The other thing is, with this being a loosely foraged commodity and not a silage, if it were to go to the ferment process, then technically it would be subject to secure load laws. So, and another thing that I'd like to point out, it's from the field. So it's not like you can move it from one place to the other. It's just from the field to the farmer marketplace.
And we don't need to have a definition of corn silage or corn loose. The definition is good. Mm-hmm. Okay. Representative Hsu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is just for my own clarification. So this is just preventing in the cases for, light cases of a citation. I assume that there are, in the cases of a really egregious example where the public is at harm, there are stronger statutes at play where it can be more severe than just a citation. If, a bunch of loosely foraged falls off a truck a lot and it causes harm, there are additional statutes that could protect, a car behind such a truck.
I'd have to get back to you on that. I don't know. I don't know of any, off the top of my head, I don't know of any statutes that would stand to that, but I also don't know of any scenarios, unless there was an accident, that something like that would happen. But off the top of my head, not that I'm aware of.
Representative Smith, if you want to comment on that.
Are you talking about like the bundled load or something like that, if that were to fall off?
Sure, and I'm not talking from a place of expertise here, obviously, but just, I can imagine a theoretical scenario where, a bunch of loosely foraged falls off maybe, and then, the car behind gets its visibility impaired, and then.
So an officer would normally have the discretion to look at whether or not it was a failure to secure load. That's the basic thing they're going to work from. So if it were somehow that the trailer wasn't secured and it came out, off the side and then blocked the highway or something like that. It might be a different thing than if it's just blowing off the top, and that's really what this is supposed to cover. If you're getting a little silage off the top, that's not such an issue, but if you're having the thing dump out on the highway, that would be a different deal.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure that that scenario is covered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Newland?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dean, you brought up a point a minute ago that this only goes from field to storage. Does this cover a producer feeding the product, though, when he takes it from storage to the pasture for feeding?
So at least from our membership standpoint, I'm not aware of any situations where a farmer is traveling, their feed is a significant distance from their feeding facility. I'm not aware of any of those types of operations that could exist. And as this is written, technically it would not, but I'm not aware of operations where feed isn't stored on site.
Well, I know when we feed, we do travel the roads, some with the silage, not forage.
Well, if that is the case, then we would be open to amendments to also include silage in this, the term silage in this bill. This was written specifically to get at corn being, or loose leaf forages getting cut and then going to the place of storage. And so I think we would be open to such amendments.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Minix?
I guess I resemble a lot of these earlier remarks. I might say that if silage comes off of a truck, it will make a sticky substance on your windshield if you get very much of it. We did have a highway patrolman in our area write about 100 tickets a month. And our county attorney thought that was extremely excessive. I guess, in my opinion, in some ways in western Kansas during that time period, most of the local residents totally understand that. It's a little bit like going down a country road and you cross an auto gate. If you know what an auto gate is and you cross one, it's kind of implied that you're being careful and watchful for cattle that might be upon that road. And so there's common sense involved, but law enforcement at times got a little zealous on how they were trying to enforce this situation. Thank you.
All right. Other questions or comments for Mr. Clare? Representative Seibert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would go along with the last two representatives on maybe the amendment, especially instead of just saying corn, if you put chopped silage. That should cover anything, whether it's wheat, corn, barley, or whatever. And then also from field to farm and from farm to feedlot. That would cover the deal that you asked for, another representative stated, because it does have to go down. Some of them might not be 10 miles. There's some that might, because we have feeders in our area that have cattle out in pastures that are away from there, and they do travel down the highway. But I think, generally speaking, they all try to do what you're saying. And again, another previous, if you see it blowing off, don't get right behind it, because we haul a lot of sand. And again, the same thing, if you get 10 feet behind a sand truck and you get your windshield broke, that's pretty much you should have some common sense, but we seem to lack that anymore. But I think that would be a good amendment if you'd want to introduce it. I'd support that.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Saying none, thanks again.
Thank you.
And also, we have a written testimony, Kansas Farm Bureau, John Donnelly. And if you have a question for Mr. Donnelly, I believe he has joined us via WebEx. He is available for questions if you have questions from Farm Bureau. I think, are we all here? Do we have a full committee? All right. We could just do all kinds of voting today. All right. Anyone else as a proponent online that we're not aware of that wants to testify? Anyone else here? Seeing none, all those now any opponents, I have down none. Anyone as an opponent to Senate Bill 89? Seeing or hearing none. Anyone neutral to testify on Senate Bill 89? Seeing or hearing none, we will close the hearing on Senate Bill 89. Now on to Senate Bill 142, that is relating to boating and water activities requiring personal flotation devices as prescribed by the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism and rules and regs. Once again, Kyle Hamilton for explanation to this bill. Kyle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Under current law, the operator of every vessel shall require every person 12 years of age or under to wear a U.S. Coast Guard approved Type 1, Type 2, or Type 3 personal flotation device while aboard or being towed by such vessel. A life belt or a ring does not satisfy that requirement. Under Senate Bill 142, as amended by the Senate committee, no operator of any vessel would be allowed to operate such vessel while any person 12 years of age or under is aboard or being towed by such vessel unless the child is either wearing a U.S. Coast Guard approved personal flotation device as prescribed in rules and regulations by the Secretary of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism, or if they are below deck or in an enclosed cabin. Senate Bill 142, as amended by Senate committee, would take effect upon publication in the statute book. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Hamilton? Seeing none, thank you, Kyle. And again, committee, notice there is a fiscal note to this, and it says that would not affect the budget, and Associated Counties said some counties provide water activities may need to purchase some flotation devices, but the fiscal effect cannot be estimated. Yes, League of Municipalities come out and said they'll have no fiscal effect on cities. So with that, we will go to proponents of Senate Bill 142, and up first is Brad Lovelace, who is the Secretary of the Department of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism. Mr. Secretary, welcome once again to committee.
I am now. Thank you, Chairman Rogers. It's good to see you, and members of the committee, it's good to see you all again. I am Brad Lovelace, Secretary of Wildlife, Parks and Tourism. Senate Bill 142 seeks to update the approved types of personal flotation devices. So at its heart, all we're trying to do is mesh with the federal regulations that apply to us. This change is necessary because current federally approved personal flotation devices, or PFDs, are not legal for use in Kansas until this statute and the accompanying regulation are changed. Boating laws are largely driven by federal law, which is administered by the United States Coast Guard, and when references to types of PFDs change at the federal level, our department must accommodate that change in regulation, but in order to do so, the way it's set up right now is we need to amend the statute. So what we're really trying to do is put enough flexibility in the statute, make it broad enough that we can more quickly amend these and keep pace with the federal changes. Federal law now refers to wearable and throwable PFDs, and rating classifications are changing from types currently to level labeling requirements now and in the future. Current PFD types in use will still be valid, so nothing will go out of regulation as long as they're still serviceable. KSA 32-1129 sets out specific types of PFDs to be used by individuals under the age of 12 while aboard a vessel, and makes the operator of the vessel responsible for that action. The statute was enacted in 1989, and specific types of PFDs were referred to in that statute. We believe this regulation allows the kind of flexibility that we need to keep current with these and keep people safe, and our vendors out there, when they're using the current devices and selling those to the public, make sure that what they're selling is legal, which we're out of step with right now, so this will correct that. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources amended the bill to not require PFDs to be worn by individuals under 12 years of age while on the boat, but underneath an enclosed space or in a cabin. We think that was a good amendment. because in the event of sinking or capsizing, a person could potentially be trapped there, held up against the ceiling of that enclosure by that PFD. So this gives more flexibility, and we think when they're under there sleeping, typically, then this is a better way to go. We also, another important feature of this is it requires the PFD be worn by that child anytime they're above decks. So whether the boat is moving or at rest, we know that's when children are vulnerable, when people aren't paying attention, adults, and the child can fall overboard and no one knows whether they're moving or stationary. So we think these are all good changes, and we support those. So we appreciate the opportunity to address the committee and ask for support of this bill. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Questions for Secretary Lovelace? Representative Carlin?
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Secretary, didn't we do this recently, or has it been 5 years? I mean,
we've
done it since I've been on this committee.
Right. The reason you've got deja vu is because historically, every time the feds change it, then we've got to come to you for a change. So under this bill we're proposing now, we'll simply be able to move in our own commission meetings to update these and keep up with the federal changes, and you won't have to bother with this in the future, hopefully.
So you will get specific product numbers or something to advise the retailers and.
Yeah. It'll be a classification, and they're really good. I mean, when they buy products, they are the currently approved devices. They're in good shape. We're the ones that get out of step, so this will enable us to keep in step with them.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I don't boat. I don't, I take showers because I don't swim. So if I ask really dumb questions, okay. But state law, if you're over the age of 12, you don't have to wear a
Correct.
PFD, right? All right. So, okay, so you have to, once you're 12, you can leave the life jacket or whatever, the device. Okay. So, you think that's fine. Okay. So, in order to make this change, are there just new labels put on gear, or have the feds reinvented gear, or explain that to me?
They've improved them. Yeah, they function differently. They're new and improved, and that's just the benefit of constant, research, and they're more comfortable than they used to be. They're safer, and so everybody wants to build a better mousetrap. So they will continue to improve as long as we're boating or you're swimming.
So you're saying I should go update my little orange,
and you should buy a boat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you talk to my wife. You want a phone number?
I'm having the same argument with my wife. We'll get together on that.
That's it.
Yeah.
Other questions for the Secretary? Representative Featherston.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there any regulations at all for 12 to 17-year-olds?
There are not. We encourage people, particularly when boats are underway, to be wearing those. That's a time when if you hit something, that you can be thrown, and it can be dangerous. So our workers certainly use them in those circumstances when they're on the water, and we encourage the public to use them then, but that's not part of the regulation.
Okay. Any boat I've been on, they've always required everybody has a life jacket. But I'm thinking your 13 to 17-year-olds, God love them, they're the horseplay crowd,
Right.
which are likely to knock each other off the boat.
Yep.
And, I mean, I don't want to create more rules where we don't need rules, but, I get it, a little kid will just fall off standing there. But
Right.
I kind of have some concern for our teenagers.
Yeah, I understand. This is really designed for those kids that really can't look out for themselves, so that's why it's those very youngest ones. But I don't disagree with you. I think there's room, depending. I know my boys some were responsible, some weren't. So I understand what you're saying.
I had girls, and they'll just stare off into space and fall overboard. So, But I'll say the boys in my studio, it's horseplay everywhere.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? If not, Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Up next is Brian Sloop, who is here also, one of the proponents. So, Mr. Sloop, thanks for being here. Thanks and welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Brian Sloop. I'm just a boater in itself, avid boater, boat Lake Perry quite a bit, and are quite active out there on the lake. As the bill is written here and passed to the committee, I support it. I think the changes are good on it, that we, one, had to update those life jacket requirements, and also the changes that were proposed in the amendment to modify where the life jackets don't have to be worn underneath. As it was and was written, anybody 12 years of age, once they were on the boat, had to wear a life jacket. And that was overnight. The child had to sleep in the life jacket as it was written. And so this is a good update. It matches with what the Senate committee matched with what the Coast Guard and the federal side currently recommends on that. And so it's just a good cohesive mix.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Sloop?
Thank you.
Come back often.
Thank you, Chairman.
No questions. So.
My advice to you is go ahead and buy the boat, then tell the wife.
Is that
That's what I did.
I've done that before with a couple businesses, and I don't know if I can. Yes, we're on the air. She's probably listening right now. I'm surprised my phone's. That's why I left my phone in the committee in my office. Okay. Any other proponents for Senate Bill 142? You know how many boat shops there are between here and home I can stop at? Yeah. Seeing none. Any opponents for Senate Bill 142? I have none down. I see none. And any neutral for Senate Bill 142? Seeing none, the hearing will close for Senate Bill 142. Committee, that's what I have on the schedule. Any other announcements? Yes, Representative Newland.
Just in case you didn't know, I have a very good, reputable boat manufacturer in our town that will set you up.
Yeah. Have them call the office number. That might work better. So, and again, reminder, our dinner with the Farm Bureau is now the 24th. I think everybody got another email, right, to remind them? Good. Because I would have been there tomorrow night. Before we get busy with our deal tomorrow, the other thing, just so you're aware, our friends to the west, if you haven't heard, Saturday's the first day of spring. The governor of Colorado has decided that would be a meat out day, which means, almost like a meatless Monday. How your preference is, what you want to do, that's your preference. But there are a lot of cattle being fed in Colorado. There are a lot of dairy cows in Colorado. There are a lot of hogs in some areas of Colorado. Do what my family will do. We're going to fire up the grill yet again. We did it a few weeks ago in that snowstorm, and we'll do it. And so if it's your preference, help our economy by eating meat, eat beef or pork, or we do roast turkey and chicken. So just have some protein. That's good. So with that, we are adjourned till tomorrow. Thank you.